Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
Yes!
Dad, I'm hungry.
G'day humans, Chris Stead here. We're back in Thredbo for year 2. Now, if you saw my video from last year, you'll know that I did a review of the ski lessons with these three munchkins to see how they go on their very first time on the mountain, to see if they get value out of that price that you need to pay in order to get lessons. So we're back for a second year here to see whether or not how year 2 goes. So just a reminder here, I've got my 3 kids with me. We've now got a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7.5-year-old. Now we're going for year 2 on the mountains. All of them are in Freeriders this year. So last year the youngest one was in Burton Riglets, so this year he's in Freeriders. And last year we had the goal of being able to go up to the top of the mountain up there and to come down with them, and I did it with this bloke. This year I'm hoping I get to do it with the other 2 and maybe even get this guy all the way up to the bell, which is on the back of the mountain. The weather plays ball because we've got some interesting weather coming ahead. Now the snow's not as good this year as it was last year, but the runs are still lots of fun. So hopefully we're going to see some big improvement this year after another 3 lessons each on the Thredbo slopes in Freeriders, which is behind us. So Charlie, let's start with you, mate. What are you hoping to get out of the lessons this time?
I'm hoping to learn how to do some 180s and more carving down the slopes.
Okay. And Jazzy, what do you want to try and get out of this lesson this year?
I want to learn how to use a T-bar.
A T-bar. Okay, yeah. And some big turns as well?
Yeah.
And Paddy, what about you?
S-turns.
S-turns. Yeah. Paddy needs to do some S-turns. All right, well, let's jump into the lessons, see how we go. Hey Paddy, what was the day like, the lesson?
The best.
Yeah, what did you do?
We went snowboarding.
Yeah, okay, but did you feel like you got better?
Yeah.
Like what's something you did today that you hadn't ever done before?
Toe side.
Oh yeah, just some toe side turns, did you? How about you?
I just did some carving and I practiced my 180s at the park.
Yeah?
And did my first ever go on a box.
Oh sweet, how was that?
Pretty fun.
Yeah.
I fell off though, and I did the big jumps on the side near the easy rider. What's it called?
What about you, birthday girl?
Huh?
What about you? How was your day?
It was great.
Yeah?
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, what'd you learn? And what's one thing you got better at?
I got better at turning.
Turning, yeah? Okay, like faster, is it? Okay. And how drunk did Mum get? All right, so we're heading back out towards Thredbo now on day 2. Thought I'd better do a bit of a day 1 recap on the lessons. So a bit of a mixed bag. So I guess I'll start with my daughter Jazzy. So she got put into a group with her friends, or people her age anyway. Made some friends. Felt like she made some really good progress. Had a really fantastic day. There were people in her lesson that weren't up to the standard of the rest of the group, and they would drop down a level. So she was in level 3, ended up in level 4, and someone was in the group and was dropped down because they just couldn't keep up with it. So that kind of went like last year. My youngest son, he was originally put into group level 3 snowboarding, even though he was in Burton Riglets last year, which was the same level they put my 12-year-old in. So they put my 7-year-old in there, and my 12-year-old was already standing there, and I pointed out to them and said, I don't know if he should be in that group, you know, my 12-year-old's in that group, he's a lot better. And they went, I moved him down to level 2, which is probably where he should have been. But after a whole day on the mountain yesterday, when I came to see him in the afternoon, he was not as good as he was at the last lesson last year. So that's not necessarily a slight on anything in particular. It's it could just be that it's not like riding a bike like I remember it being. Maybe there just is that bit more of a transition period, get back up to speed period in that age group. But at the end of last year, he was kind of S-turning down, and then when I found him at the end of yesterday, he couldn't S-turn at all. So, and they were saying, you've got to get him S-turning, and I was like, okay, that's where we were last year. So, yeah, not. So that was kind of, I guess, neutral result. My oldest son, though, there was a real kerfuffle, I thought. So he was put into group 3. He was in group 4 last year, and he said to them, they said to him, oh, maybe you should just do group 3 just to get you a refresher. Bad call. Should have stayed in group 4 where he was supposed to be. So group 4 was a whole bunch of boys his age, and they disappeared up the mountain. Group 3 that he was in was him and another 7-year-old kid. So I basically separated him from his younger brother because there's obvious differences because there's 5 years between them. And they ended up putting him in a group with another 7-year-old, so a little 7-year-old. And I thought to myself at the time, I was watching it going, oh, okay, well maybe that's some kid from overseas who lives in an area where there's like, you know, where snow's part of their life, and maybe he's a lot better than I think, even though if that was the case, why would he be doing a lesson? But a couple of hours later, I found him on the mountain, and my son was just sitting in the snow basically for ages, while this other kid who couldn't even do an S-turn, so he was at the level of my youngest, Paddy, couldn't actually turn down the hill at all. So he was just kind of wafting down, doing leaps, falling over, having to undo his bindings because he couldn't get through areas and everything like that. And so I was just watching for about half an hour as my son just sat in the snow basically, just waiting for this little kid to get down. I was like, what is going on here? Like, why is my 12-year-old in the same group as a 7-year-old, and they're nowhere near the same level? So apparently there was a third kid in there originally as well, but they busted their wrist and left straight away. So I ended up talking to the instructor and saying, like, you know, do you want me to just take my son to lunch because so you can concentrate on this little kid, and then at lunch you can move him to a different lesson? And he was like, oh, no, like, you know, you're paying for this, you should leave him here, I'm still teaching him stuff. And I was like, oh, well, it was only half an hour to lunch, so I'll just leave it. And then after lunch, I found him on the mountain again, like an hour and a half later, and it's the same system, same process. It's just this little 7-year-old kid who can't basically get down, and my son just sitting in the snow watching. And I'm just like, oh, this is no good. Like, and I went over and had a chat to him. Like I'm not blaming them. This is the group they were given. And said to him, like, mate, like, this is ridiculous. Like, he's 12, he's 7. I actually separated him from his 7-year-old brother because of this exact situation, and you got the groups wrong. And luckily, my youngest son's group came past at that point, who was the same age and the same level as this other kid, and the instructor that had my oldest son said to that guy, can you take this kid so I can take the bigger kid on a couple of runs? Which they did. So they organised it themselves on the hill. But the you know, at the time I was like, just can you see me the bigger group and I'll go find them and I'll take him over there so he's with his, you know. So I guess the outcome of this is basically to be a bit more vigilant on the when you're actually, the kids are actually getting into their classes. I should have been more proactive and more vigilant at the start. I should have been more stronger on where his level was, and I probably should have done something straight away when it was clear to me that they were using a mismatched group. And I didn't, and so more than half a day was wasted, and it was the best day for weather as well. And as a result, you know, in the end it worked out really well because he got basically a private lesson for a couple of hours. So it worked out really well enough for us in the end, but it could have easily gone the other way. And I think potentially it was down to the fact that there just wasn't that many kids doing lessons yesterday. So I think they just divided and conquered and but they shouldn't have. Really, they should have kind of gone, you know what, we don't have a lesson for this kid today. So even just copped it and put him just with an instructor by himself, or done one group extra big, the level 4, or said, sorry, you're not going to get your value for your money here today, so you know, come back on Thursday or another day or something like that. They shouldn't have just had, you know, taken the money and then let the kid just sit there in the snow all day watching it, having a bad time. So I think it's really important that not only are you getting kind of the instruction at the level that you need, And it's a random group lesson, but a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old who are completely different skill sets should just never be in the same lesson, because it's always got to be the lowest common denominator that wins. But also part of these lessons is that they're hanging with kids their own age, you know, and kind of having a social experience. So that's just something to be wary of. Anyway, I'm optimistic that today's going to be a lot better for everyone. And like I said, my daughter, fantastic experience yesterday. My son, bit of a neutral experience, didn't seem to really improve, but at the same time had a really good time. And my oldest son, it worked out all right in the end, but yeah, there was definitely some teething issues there. So we'll see how it goes today. So we're here at day 2. Now day 1, there was basically no kids here. Day 2, this queue actually it's moving pretty quickly actually, but it was twice as long when we got here. It's just to get divvied up into your classes for Freeriders. So I don't know, these people weren't here yesterday, so it's going to be interesting to see how many new kids there are doing lessons, because there's obviously a lot, and how that's going to impact our kids that were doing lessons yesterday. So I think we just got unlucky yesterday. I think it was a Monday, the last Monday of the school holiday, so just a transition period. So just something to be mindful of if you're coming down like we did on the Monday. There's less people on the slopes, but lessons, as you can see here, that's divvied up. There's a whole different kettle of fish. Okay, so it's day 3 now. The kids have just disappeared up the mountain for the day of lessons, their last day of lessons. If you watched my video from last year, on the first year that they were doing lessons, you'll know that the Freeriders area where they kind of met was different. It was over there behind the chairlift. So here now they meet, it's more open, it's a bit easier I think, it's not so secreted away. Then they go up and they do a safety run down the mountain, and that helps them divvy up the classes. Now the reason why that's important is because the people that arrive every single day are different to the people the day beforehand, right? Some people might do Wednesday to Sunday, some people might just do the weekend, some people are here for the whole week. So every day they don't really know what they're getting, and so they do a safety run where they go down the mountain once, judge everybody on what they're doing. Now I'm bringing that up because it's going to be important in a second. So in terms of the next day, what we had was, on day 2, was the issues that my oldest son had the day beforehand, they were changed, and he was put into a class with a whole bunch of other 12-year-olds and a 14-year-old, and he went up the hill and he was hitting the terrain parks and had a really great day with people his own age, and mastered some new skills, did 180s, did a few bits and pieces like that, did boxes, so that was actually really good for him, and he had a much better day and progressed a lot further. My daughter, he's now in the kind of the top snowboarding group, which is good. My daughter, she just kept at it, hard yakka. Her class was excellent the first day, excellent the second day. She was really happy, had a really good time. Went on the T-bar for the first time, skilled herself up, didn't move up a level. So she was in level 3 last year, and this year she's in level 4. There are levels higher, I think it goes up to 7 or 8, but it might be behind me. It goes up to 8. But she's in the same group of girls of the last couple of days with the same instructor. And I think that's actually going to do better for her than being a level up, because she's got the same social group and she's pushing herself with the same people. So everything really good there. My youngest son, he did not have a good day yesterday. So at the end of day 1, he was in level 2. They said, okay, you got to go up to level 3 the next day. And in level 3, you got to be able to do S-turns, right, down the mountain. So then he started in level 3. The instructor from the day beforehand told the new instructor, yep, he's ready for level 3. She did one safety run down the mountain with him and decided, you know what, he's not doing S-bends as well as I'd like him to, and sent him back to level 2. Now the problem is, in the level 2, they didn't even teach S-bends. So he's not spending the entire day sitting there on Friday flats and like the best in his group by a mile, learning absolutely nothing. Whereas the day beforehand, he was up the top of the mountain in Merritts, going down and actually pushing himself and learning. So he had basically a completely dead day. He didn't pick up anything. And at the end of the day, I was like, well, what's going on? They said, well, you got to teach him how to do S-bends. And I said, why do I have to teach him to do S-bends? This is his 5th day of lessons. It's expensive. Why am I teaching him how to do S-bends? You just moved him out of the group where he would have learned how to do S-bends and put him in a group where he doesn't know how to, where they didn't even try and learn how to do S-bends. So last night I went up the mountain, I did a couple of runs with him, made sure that he could do S-bends, I filmed it. And then this morning I went and spoke to the lady who knocked him out of the group yesterday and said, look, here's some footage of him doing S-bends, he can do them. She goes, oh no, we know that there's these people who they can do the turns, but they just choose not to. And I was like, okay, but isn't that your job? to teach them to do what they can do, not just go, I couldn't be bothered, and send them down a class and waste a whole day of their time. So that was really disappointing. I don't think it's the way that it should be done. I think that they should have identified that he could do it, that he'd been pushed up, he'd already done the level 2 and got through it, and that they should have pushed him up to level 3 where all his mates were moved to. And anyway, so I guess the point of this is that it's a lesson for him that in the morning when they're doing their safety run, they've got to show what they can do, not be tired and distracted and just do a lazy run down the hill because he got moved down as a result of that, not pushing himself. And I did instruct him to do that beforehand, but he just didn't take it on board. So that's something you need to know, is to actually just tell your children, to be them best selves going down that thing, because they want to be in a group that's a bit higher. Otherwise they might end up being in a group like Paddy was yesterday, where he just wasn't in any way, shape or form pushed to push himself, so he didn't. So that's something to keep in mind, but also you just got to pay, the first year I didn't notice this at all, but this year definitely had to advocate a lot more for the kids and just kind of say, no, look, he can do this, it's not okay. He spent the whole entire day sitting in the snow because he was in the wrong group and no one did anything about it. And at the expense that you're paying for these lessons, I don't think, that's okay. So that's just something to know. So I ended up just going and filming him doing what they wanted him to do and then showing him and saying, look, he can do it. So you now just unlock him. Anyway, that was my experience of day 2. I think day 3 is going to be excellent. The weather's turned on. They're all now 3 of them are in classes that they are going to push them. And I think that, I'm expecting a really, really good day today, and I'm really looking forward to the days that follow when they'll be with me going up and down the mountain. All right. So we have completed day 3, and the kids have had their 3 days of lessons. So I wanted to do a bit of a wrap-up video. Today was a bluebird day up at Thredbo. So the sun was out. It was warm actually, about 7 degrees. A bit icy, challenging conditions to be sure, but Thredbo does a really good job actually of just making the most of what little snow there may be to create plenty of fun runs. So I had a really good day, and as you can probably see, I'm pretty tired and wrecked. Now on to the kids. So all 3 of them had a really good day today with the lessons, which is great. So my oldest son, there was 3 in his group, and they went up and down the mountain all day, pushed themselves even further. My son had a bit of a knock, took a crash, and got assessed at some point, but by the paramedics. But they were happy with the head knock and his wrist, and he kept going. I never heard about it to the end of the day. And my daughter, she was just through the same group, just kept on going. So she started in level 3 and ended in level 4, and didn't go up from there, but by the same token, I don't think any of them did. I think they just stayed as a group for the 3 days. So I think she really lucked out and she had a great time. My oldest, he started in 3, which he shouldn't have, as I've gone into, and it ended up in 5, and there is technically a 6, but there wasn't enough kids, so there was no 6, so he was in the top for the last couple of days, and with his people his own age, and he had a really good time as well. And my youngest, today, he stayed with that in that 3s after I kind of took him on in the morning and filmed him doing the S-bends and showed them that he could do it. And the teacher, the coach was really happy with his progress today and said that, after I realised that he could do it and I pushed him a little bit, then he made huge advancements really quickly. So all in all, a really good day with the lessons. And I know I've had a few negative things to say or frustrations to say during this kind of video over the last couple of days, and they've been to do with the process. I think the process kind of let 2 of the kids down on 2 of the sessions. So they were all up. There was 3 kids, 3 days of lessons. So there was 9 lessons, as you could say, and 2 of them, I think they got it wrong through process. the process didn't quite hit. So that's, I mean, it's still not too bad, I guess, and overall the experience has been good. I think the kids are in a better spot. Definitely, I'm super stoked with my daughter's confidence. She last year when we started, she was in tears going into the lesson. If you watched the first video, I detailed that. This time she just went straight in, no concerns at all, was confident with the process and confident with meeting new people and doing the lessons, and she's just blitzed it and had this great week, 3 great lessons. Even though both my oldest and my youngest had particular lessons that just, you know, they should have been dealt with, moved, you know, they were beyond the scope of that quality of that lesson. They still had fun. They still didn't come back to me saying, hey, they had a really bad time. They still had fun. So that side of it, I think, can't be ignored. I think it's worth pointing out that the individuals that I've spoken to, as in the actual coaches themselves, were just, you know, universally awesome. And even though a few times I challenged the process, they were receptive to it, and on both occasions actually kind of agreed. So they're just really good people. And one of the things that they did this year, which they didn't do last year, is that you get an email at the end of the day where where you can offer some feedback, and you can also, they send you like a rating card or a report. It's called a report on your child, and says this is kind of what they did really well, this is what they were kind of struggling with, this is what they need to work on some more. And also, in some occasions, not all, but on some occasions also even give you like a couple of paragraphs, or, you know, 150 words or so on your child. And that's really cool, actually. That's kind of more than I would have expected. So that, I was pretty happy with that. And even my youngest son today, his coach, who was the person who dropped him down the day beforehand, which I wasn't happy with, because she said, I got to drop you down because you can't do S-bends, but then dropped him down to a class where they didn't teach S-bends. So that was kind of that grey area of like, well, what was the point of that? But I didn't speak to her yesterday. I spoke to her today, and she was a really awesome human. And at the end of the day, she'd worked really well with Paddy. They had a really good lesson. He had clearly advanced, and she'd even taken video, and, you know, I gave her my number. She sent some video to us, you know, so above and beyond. So, you know, it's kind of left me feeling overall pretty positive about the experience. The first year that we did this, I was blown away. I was like, this was such good value for money. I'm so happy we did it. This second year, I still feel that way. I still feel like, you know, the last 3 days I've been able to do a lot of boarding. Today I got to spend some time with my wife on the slopes, and she's a beginner skier, so I got to help her, and that's time we wouldn't have had if they weren't in the lessons together. And the kids made some friends, and they had a lot of fun, and they progressed. So definitely, I think year 2, still worth it. My oldest son, if we came back again next year, well, I hope we do come back. If we do come back again next year for year 3, I don't know if he would necessarily go into lessons. Probably not 3 days of it. Maybe just 1 day for him, and then maybe from there he might just end up getting more just by going out and pushing himself. You know, if he had his friends down here, I'd just say go with your mates. You know, you learn a bit more of that. My daughter, I think there's still a few things that she could learn. Definitely with the parallel turning, I think there's a few places that she can still push herself, maybe even get into terrain park a bit. So there could be some value there. And my youngest, obviously still plenty of room for improvement there. So he could definitely do with another year, I think, of lessons. So that's my takeaway from year 2 of lessons at Thredbo. I hope that's helped. I hope that's helped you guys in thinking about whether or not you would feel whether or not you need to invest at all in lessons, because it's a media investment. But definitely with us, with a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old and a 7.5-year-old in year 2, I think they've still got the value for money there that you would hope for. Anyway, sorry, I'm so tired. I'm going to finish this and go to sleep. But thanks very much for watching, and make sure you check out that first video if you haven't already to see what year 1's like. And look out on the channel for a bit more content about Thredbo in general. I'll just put up some tips and things that we've learned about here and the journey down here from Sydney to help anyone else who's coming down. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Chris Stead. Till next time, back on the road. You.